Welcome to the Magic Hour, a safe haven for lost stories and curious folk. On today's episode, I am so excited to be joined by Claire Steiner, who is a nurse practitioner and an OBGYN, and will be unearthing more content on menopause and the mythic journey we travel through as we age.
Hello. Welcome. So we've heard that you are a certified nurse practitioner working in gynecology, but we also noticed on your profile that you had undergone training on how to create safer medical experiences or spaces for our rainbow community. So I especially want to thank you and welcome you on behalf of all of our queer folk.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm honored to be asked. I have lots to talk about today. You guys had some really great questions.
Good.
Yeah, so I am I'm trained as a family, or when do you want me to jump in?
Jump in.
Jump in. Great. So I am trained as a family nurse practitioner. I was trained in primary healthcare across the lifespan. One way. I'm queer. I have some friends who were trans. They were like, we can't find a gynecologist, like anybody to provide gynae care for us. This was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, I could probably do that. So then when I went, I was working as a nurse. I worked in trauma, orthopedics, like trauma, like car accidents, trauma, orthopedics, hip and knee replacements, community health. And the community health, that job sort of was where I found my niche. Working with a lot more people kind of in my community who were having trouble finding care. I look like a straight white lady, so people tend to assume I am a straight white lady, but when one does not look like a straight white lady, it is difficult to find care.
Right.
So when I moved to Pittsburgh and I was teaching nursing at University of Pittsburgh, went back to school because I had the opportunity to do that. I thought I'm going to specialize in gynecology.
Wow. And I think we're going to have a bit of chat around medical related opinion and experience, like things that you observed in your practice. So maybe we'll just drop in a quick medical disclaimer that you've kindly found as well.
Yeah. So do you want me to read that, or do you guys want
that? I can do it if you want. So nothing Claire says is intended as medical advice. It's not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. So if you have questions or concerns about your health, listeners, we recommend you follow up with your own providers. Everything Claire says will be her opinion, and it's for entertainment and learning purposes only. And also, I wanted to say that we will be talking a little about abuse and trauma, so it might be difficult for some people. So just be aware that that will be in here.
Yeah.
Listen with care.
Yeah, we try to emanate soft cotton clouds of care with that. That is our hope, that we can go into these places with grace.
Yeah.
I'm also coming from a scientific medical nursing model, so that's most of the expertise I'm going to be sharing today. It is not the only model. It is just where I am. It is how I am trained, and it is my background.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. So before we go into some of that scientific stuff, is there anything else you want to share about yourself or your profession? Like when you were young, did you know you wanted to do this, or was it something you learned later in life? Things like that.
Yeah. So I kind of had an interesting path to end up in healthcare. I grew up, my mom was a nurse, and she's just a particularly happy person. She worked weekends and then was home with my sisters and I during the weekdays. My dad is a physician, just wasn't home a lot. He's also a wonderful, loving person. He just, wasn't home quite as much. And they both told me, don't go into healthcare. Don't do it. It's changing. The billing is terrible. You're not going to be able to take care of patients the way you want to. Because they were both having trouble doing that. And so I went into computer science.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And I hated it. Talking to people, I was in front of a computer for 40 hours a week. I had a job out in Los Angeles. I missed my family. I missed the East Coast. I had a yeast infection. So I went to the gynecologist, and I was sitting there, and I thought, I should have gone into healthcare. But I went back to school.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a really cool story.
Yeah. So my initial undergrad was from Penn State. They have these accelerated bachelor's of nursing programs for people who want to go into nursing. So I did a 12-month nose to the grindstone program at Thomas Jefferson in Philadelphia, and have never looked back.
Wow.
Best decisions I've made in my life.
I hear good things about Penn State. Yeah. That's amazing. Because I was wondering if it was at all a contrast for you, being someone who had gone through a different training and was going into medicine, and like I'm assuming most medical practitioners in their early education process are like quite young. You get like fresh out of high school.
I think coming into healthcare with more life experience was incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't coming into it with sort of like rainbows and sunshine. Not to say that coming into healthcare with that there's anything wrong with it, but having a little bit more perspective helped me deal with a lot of the really difficult things that I saw early on in my career.
Can you talk about those at all?
Yeah.
So, I had some grandparents die when I was a younger adult. And seeing that process, like having gone through that process myself, then being in a hospital setting and helping other families to go through being the caregiver for dying people, either like young from really like traumatic and terrible experiences, or older people who were, the family had sort of known for and expected for a while that they were at the end of their life. I think I had a lot more insight into what it meant to care for the family of a dying person as well as the dying person themselves. And I could just sort of go home and cry it out and then leave it and move on.
Wow.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it sounds like you were more equipped to deal with like some of the hard, really tricky things that people don't think about a lot on a daily basis.
Yeah. I think I was also, I had kind of more insight into just like people and communities, work and politics and, hospital politics, just because anytime that there are people, there is politics. I had a little bit of an easier time navigating those things, and I knew what I wanted. And I sort of had a more kind of concrete direction. So other sort of shiny, interesting avenues were not quite as appealing.
Yeah. Interesting. When you say you knew what you wanted, specifically gynecology?
I kind of knew that I wanted that from the beginning, yes. But I also knew that I wanted to take care of people, and that was that is my goal when I go to work every day. And if I have done that means I had a good day at work. There are a lot of other conflicting things in medicine, right? There is staying on time. There is making money. There is, among many other things. But when I prioritize taking care of people, everything, I am a happier person. I enjoy my job more, etc.
Wow.
Are there any other things you love to do in your spare time when you have it?
I'm a big runner.
Cool.
That's a lot of fun, just like run until everything falls away.
Gotcha.
I have a partner and a cat.
Nice.
And then I have a house, and I've been having a lot of fun working on my house, learning, doing electrical stuff, gardening. Yeah.
Sounds so wholesome and charming.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
I'm quite happy with my life. Yeah. I've worked hard for a lot of years, and I feel very lucky, like incredibly lucky to be in a place where I'm happy and and to have, my health and the health of my family, etc.
Yeah. Yay.
We have some questions for you about menopause.
Yeah, let's talk about menopause. Fun times.
I have some answers about menopause.
Maybe before we even get into those, do you want to just talk about from like a medical standpoint, like how it's talked about and dealt with in general from your perspective in the
perspective of debunking.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm gonna just start from the beginning and talk a lot about menopause, and you interrupt me at any time with any questions.
Okay.
All right. So menopause. Natural, normal menopause. And when I say normal is not a value judgment. It's more, it's a statistical term. But there's a bell curve, and most people are sort of in the middle. So most people, the average age of menopause, which is when the other thing I wanted to say, I'm going to talk about like women and people with uteruses kind of interchangeably, but I'm specifically talking about like people with uteruses who are not on hormones to make them not bleed.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah. People who are like cis women and continue to be, like, who are assigned to at birth and are cis women. So natural menopause usually occurs around age 51. It can start before 40, which is unusual. It can start between 40 to 45, which is considered early menopause. But menopause, which is the cessation of monthly regular menstrual periods, is determined by looking back retrospectively after somebody has experienced 12 months of no bleeding, which we call amenorrhea. So
amenorrhea. What a beautiful sounding word.
Yeah, menorrhea is menstruation.
Yeah.
And that there is no other disease-causing process that has stopped periods.
Gotcha.
And
with you.
Sorry.
We're with you.
Yeah.
So this is a reflection of complete or near complete ovarian follicular depletion, which just means your ovaries stop ovulating.
Right.
You can't get pregnant. And in addition to stopping ovulating, they stop making estrogen. Everybody still has a little bit of estrogen. Adipose tissue makes estrogen. There's what we call peripheral conversion of estrogen. So you still have some estrogen, but suddenly you have much, much less.
Right.
And when we do tests to look for this, we will see low estrogen. And then there's a feedback loop between the brain and the ovaries. And the brain tells the ovaries to, have a cycle. And when the ovaries have a cycle, they signal to the brain that they've had a cycle. And then the brain is like, great. Instead, what we see with lab work is we see the brain kind of yelling at the ovaries.
That's rude.
So the hormone called follicular stimulating hormone, or FSH, we see is very high. So pretty easy to diagnose menopause. We check your labs. You have low estrogen and a high FSH, and there's nothing else going on. Things that are normal leading up to this last period. So we sort of say menopause and postmenopause interchangeably, but really menopause is your last period, and postmenopause is everything that comes after.
But some of the kind of hormonal and attitudinal and mental symptoms would be happening during those last periods?
So yes, usually they start about 4 to 5 years earlier.
Interesting.
In what we call the perimenopausal phase.
Okay.
Yeah, so peri is just sort of around menopause.
Ballpark,
yes. So it begins about, on average, 4 years before your last period, before a person's last period. And it includes lots of changes that often affect a person's quality of life. So normal are to have sort of lighter periods that are less frequent. That doesn't always happen, but if that is what's happening, that's normal.
That sounds great.
And eventually they stop.
Yeah.
The things that people most often complain of are not the periods going away. It is hot flashes, sleep disturbances, insomnia, mood fluctuations, vaginal dryness, night sweats, which we call, so the hot flashes and night sweats we call vasomotor symptoms.
Yes.
Because they're occurring as a symptom of these like big hormonal fluctuations that are going on. Yeah. Things that people don't obviously see but are still happening, and people don't come in and complain to me that they're having these things, are a decrease in bone loss that down the road can lead to osteopenia and osteoporosis, or kind of age-acquired brittle bone disease that can result in a higher risk of breaking a bone and having trouble healing it at a later age.
Right.
And then we also see changes in lipids, so what people commonly refer to as cholesterol.
Gotcha.
So cis men are sort of at a higher risk of heart disease than cis women who are premenopausal. We find that estrogen is really protective against heart disease and high cholesterol and things like that. But then after menopause, cis women's risk slowly goes up until it's about where the risk of cis men is, just because they have suddenly lost this protective factor of tons and tons of estrogen every month.
Gotcha. So you just mentioned like so many aspects of the medical experience. You talked about kind of like body temperature, you talked about hormones, you talked about like your actual reproductive system, you talked about musculoskeletal issues, mental health. That, to me, that is a whole gambit of different types of specialties.
It's a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
This is not like it's like reverse puberty.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great way of putting it.
This is not for some people, for a small percentage of people, about 20% of people, they don't have a ton of hot flashes. They sort of go through it pretty easily. But for most women, there are things that are bothersome.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is huge. This is not a small stage of life.
No, it really spans a whole range of things in a woman's life.
Quick other little thing, when you speak of estrogen, isn't there also, like, I know people who've had this, like the estrogen change can result in cancer at that period because it goes down or up. I forget. It goes down.
It goes down. Yeah.
So like, I know someone who got breast cancer when that happened.
Yeah. Oncology is not my specialty. That is a
Gotcha.
great question for a cancer doctor.
Gotcha.
Not know the answer to that question.
Yeah, but that's what I keep
hearing. Good question.
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe it's newer. Maybe it's something they're just starting to figure out. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what I do know about cancer is when people have, like, let's say breast cancer, we test the breast cancer to see what hormones it responds to. And some cancers may be stimulated to grow by estrogen or progesterone. And in which case we give them medications that block
those hormones.
Yeah. Gotcha. And so people, who are like maybe have breast cancer at a younger age. When I was in nursing school, my roommate, who was in her 40s, had breast cancer and had to go on one of these medications. And she went through what to her felt like menopause because suddenly her estrogen was being blocked.
Right. Gotcha.
So there's like, these all the things that happen during menopause don't only happen during menopause. They can happen other times if there is for some reason like a loss of estrogen in the body. Like let's say so if we're giving someone, an estrogen blocking medication, if somebody has ovarian cancer or endometriosis and we remove their ovaries, they are going through a menopausal process, but it is not sort of normal physiologic menopause.
Right. So with all that, like, kind of in our minds, how do you feel as you've been in like the medical profession? Do you like how it's dealt with? Do you think there are some things that are working? In some ways it could be dealt with differently. Are there like myths about it that you feel like need to change?
Yeah.
What are some thoughts?
The way we sort of deal with it in the practice that I work in is we just kind of wait until people have issues.
Yeah.
we hopefully we are seeing people for their annual preventative care exams. And if people don't have a ton of questions and they're in their 40s, I will just start talking about, hey, menopause is on the horizon, and talk about the things that I'm talking about here today, and giving people like, here are some normal things, here are some not so normal things, so that if it starts to happen to them, they're not freaking out like, oh my God, what happened? I missed my period. I might be pregnant.
Yeah.
Right? If you're 49, 50 and you're missing a period and your pregnancy test is negative, say, like assuming that you're having sex with a partner who has sperm, menopause.
Yeah.
It's like sort of what we had the highest suspicion of, unless there is something else going on that.
Gotcha.
Right. But you're looking for like clusters of circumstances, and you're educating your ovary having patients as early as possible.
Yes. Yeah. Right. So
I like that.
So one is like we sort of start with some education, and two is when people start having issues, if they start having issues, they come in and like, I really can't sleep. I wake up, every 20 minutes with these terrible hot flashes. I'm like sweating. My husband or my partner is like sleeping in another room because I have all the fans on, and the air conditioning. I have like another air conditioning unit in the room, and I just can't sleep, and I can't deal with my life because I can't sleep. Then we do something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a long list of options ranging from like herbal supplements to hormone replacement to antidepressants that we give at low doses that are off-label for menopausal symptoms to like there are some various like pain medications, and there's a long list of things we can try to sort of help alleviate these symptoms.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that, because you think, based on like a previous myth, this is just a woman's lot in life, that meant you could infer that means that there's nothing you can do, but you literally just, that's our first mythbuster right there.
Yeah.
There is
a lot we can,
bevy of levers to pull.
Yeah. I would agree with you that there is a lot of myth around menopause. One is that there's nothing we can do about it. Another one that I hear a lot is people coming in and asking me to quote balance their hormones, and I have to talk to them about like, this, you are going through menopause, your body is doing a normal healthy thing. I can help alleviate your symptoms, but your hormones aren't technically out of balance.
Right. Well, that makes sense,
because
we think we can course
than they
correct
were before.
Yeah, we think we can course correct from aging. This is the promise that the beauty industry has given us.
But the thing that I think that inspired me to bring you on was just when I'm listening to you talk about it in this almost like joyful, like kind of fun, like it doesn't feel like a death sentence. You talk about these things like, we'll figure it out. Like almost like it's like an interesting problem to solve. And I think that that's part of the myth busting, which is like talking about it not as if it's like either ignoring it and acting like nothing's happening, or being like, oh, it's happening, like good luck. It's like, yeah, we'll get you through this time.
It's just a normal part of life.
It's a normal thing. It's fine.
Yeah.
The
other thing I hear from my patients is that nobody talks about it and knows what to expect. And sometimes I have the first provider who has said, this is normal, or said, in the next few years, you may start to have hot flashes or something like that, and given them kind of some education on the subject.
Mm-hmm.
But many people do not talk about it. It's sort of like periods, right? It is it's like this internal plumbing. Women suffer in silence. It's gross, and men don't want to hear about it, and so just don't mention it.
This is a paradigm we are more than willing to throw out the window, that we don't talk about things.
We should talk about things.
So that's why we're talking about it. And I also am thinking about like gender and identifying as one or the other, and this like femininity and your period and your organs. And when you stop being able to do one thing with your organs, suddenly you might lose your femininity. And I think that's something that came up for me when I, as a straight white woman, like reading about that. And then when I started thinking, but that's like the most small part of me, and what does femininity even mean? It's like I was realizing what I've been kind of trained to think about myself, and how it's like really not that big of a part of me at all. I think that's just something I'm starting to realize the more I like explore this whole subject, is like how we're wrapped up in these things and how they're not really that huge a part of us in a way, or they don't have to be if we don't make them be, I guess.
I'm recalling my high school science teacher, who was this very tall, redheaded man with all of these freckles. And we were talking about like what makes life life. And he said that the ability to, in the list of things we were tested on was the ability to reproduce. And he said to us, if you put just reproduction on the test, that's a wrong answer. Because he would say, I have not reproduced. I do not plan on reproducing.
Yeah.
But I have the ability to reproduce, right? That is what makes like a living creature versus like a rock or a mineral, etc.
Right.
What a champ.
Yeah. That's cool.
Can't even remember this guy's name, but like that has stuck with me for so many years.
Yeah. I would very much have appreciated that, because that was something that I grapple with. This kind of, it's my job, but what if I don't want that job?
Yeah. It's just a thing bodies can do. Bodies are wild and weird and wonderful, and you don't have to do all the things with them that they can do.
Like all the things.
Like I have run a half marathon. My sister was like, let's train for a marathon. And I said, actually, no, thank you. I'm also never going to do another half marathon because that was terrible. So now I don't run more than 3 miles time.
It's amazing.
That's a bit of an extreme example, but
that was great. Just because you can reach these limits.
You have to. No, it doesn't say anything about you are you. Like, you get to decide. No one else really gets to decide.
Right. This is your body, right?
Yeah.
And I think part of my philosophy is in practicing medicine and nursing is that I am here to give information, and you can decide what to do with it.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. And so
how
that's
do
like
you
your
keep?
philosophy. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you keep informed and updated? What's your kind of regime of growth and continuing medical education?
Yeah. So I love Morbidity and Mortality Weekly, which is the CDC's weekly newsletter. I am a huge nerd.
Real quick.
I will read it every week, and then my mom and I talk about it because she's a nurse still, and we're like, oh my gosh, can you believe that thing about like the alpha-gal meat allergy we saw in that one patient that one time, and here it is in the CDC.
That's so cool.
There is a tick-borne meat allergy that the CDC is now looking into. So that was like a very recent.
I heard about that actually. I think one of my friends has it from her line.
Is it the red meat? The red meat
she
allergy?
Can't eat meat now.
Yeah, it's a mammal meat allergy.
Is that from Lyme's disease? I feel like I read that it was connected.
It's from a similar. So I've seen it in relation to the Lone Star tick.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, no. So it was just tick-borne. Okay.
Yeah, just like generally tick-borne.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so that's one way. Another way is I'm a member of the Nurse Practitioners in Women's Health, which is very gendered, the name, but they really cover like the gamut of like reproductive health for people with uteruses and ovaries, etc., and vaginas and vulvas. They send me like monthly magazines, and I read those, and they have continuing education inside of them. But my favorite resource is Up to Date.
Up to Date.
Which is just this it's this database of it's just so full of information. Basically, you can search it. You have to pay for it, but you can search any topic, and it will give you a summary that was written by like some very good experts on the subject, and they update it every few months.
Oh wow, amazing.
Yeah. And, my practice, we have monthly meetings about, this is coming down the pipeline. There's new research about breast cancer. There's new research about, pap smears. So it's
that's
just
cool.
Always around.
Always evolving. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you go to conferences and stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not going to one this year, but I did go to one last year. And man, it was a lot of fun. Did a lot of learning.
Cool. If a woman is, or someone with a uterus is starting to feel like they're going through some sort of struggle with their menopause experience, what's some advice? I know you can't you can offer your own thoughts, but would one of those things be just ask questions in the office? Is that what you would say?
I would say ask questions, yes, and bring a list,
Mm-hmm.
because you get there and then you're like, oh shit, what was that question that I thought of in the car on the other day? And you're sitting there and your provider's like, we only have 15 minutes scheduled, and like, 5 of those minutes I spent looking over your chart before I even got in here, and we also have to do an exam. But if you like come in with a list of questions and you're like, these are my questions, and you ask that, and if you don't get satisfying information, ask a follow-up question. We're not going to get mad at you. We're just busy because capitalism. And it is at odds with hospitals making money. I mean, they're a business. They need to make money to, pay their bills and pay their staff. But some of the goals of the hospital system are at odds with the goal of taking your time, talking to people.
Absolutely.
As a healthcare provider.
And I think that ties in a little to my thoughts on trauma, if we can kind of like teeter on the edge of that idea, which is, you've been sharing about time. You say time a lot. You say the capitalism thing a lot, which is really true, that it can be hard to like make that connection in the doctor's office, because that person, it's not that they don't care, it's that they have like 30 other people and 30 other things. And you have people coming in with real issues being, examined, with past, abuse that they've had. How do we maneuver in this space where it isn't designed for us to connect and have real conversations? How do we do it anyway? And
that's a great question.
Yeah.
It's so what I said before is asking. Just ask and just tell us, right? Like, we want to take good care of you. If you're there for an STD check because you hooked up with this guy and the condom broke and you're not super worried, but you just want to double check, and, and you're in and out of there in 15 minutes, like, no worries. Like, I'll swab you. I'll say, I'll call you when all your results come back.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of those. But then there's, people who, they're coming in and it's their third baby and they don't really have any questions. And we're just, checking the fetal heart tones and, looking at some lab results and sending them on their way. But, interspersed with the sort of quick, more routine visits are visits from people who have more questions and have maybe medical trauma or have experienced sexual abuse or sexual assault. I think the statistic is like 1 in 4 or 1 in 3, maybe.
Really bad.
Something stupid high.
Yeah.
And so we do rely on patients, on people who are coming in to say like, hey, I have a history of medical trauma. You don't have to tell us what happened. If you want to tell me the whole story, I am going to sit there and listen and hold your hand and like we can cry it out together. But if you just want to be like, I really don't like being here, I kind of want to get in and out pretty quickly, but can you just be extra gentle in your exam? Just say like, I have a hard time with pelvic exams, or I have a history of trauma, or whatever it is, like, succinctly that you want to tell me, or whichever provider who you are seeing, just let them know. They will take their time. We have also like many different like sizes of speculums and right, for people of different shapes and sizes. We sort of have our like average one that we use for most people, but sometimes people have like a little bit more pelvic pain with pelvic exams because maybe their muscles are tight or they have this history of trauma. And if you tell me, we will use a smaller speculum. Or if I need to use a wider speculum, I will explain to you, I need to use this wide speculum because I need to see something that I couldn't see with this smaller speculum or whatever. And I can walk you through it and we can take our time a little bit more. You can help me insert the speculum inside of your vagina if that's something you want to do. I can give you a mirror and you can,
cool.
You can watch what we are doing. We have all these options, but we don't do a good job of sort of making them readily available. Like here's the menu. We sort of just like pull them out and people are like, I have, and if we see the, if I see somebody is sort of like struggling with what to tell me, I'm like, I automatically, we slow down and we listen and then we present those options.
Oh, I love hearing about that. I have so
people.
many thoughts though, like with how busy you guys already are, like, do they train you in some of the like dealing with trauma, or is it
Yeah.
just not? They do? Oh, cool. Okay, so you do talk about it
A
in
little
school.
bit. Yeah, it's in school. People who I think have been trained more recently are probably going to be a little better at it.
Right.
I can say that having been through training in the last 10 years myself. I don't know how much older doctors have gone through with that. But they're current. They know what's going on. They read the research. They see the same patients I'm seeing. And if you ask them, they will slow down.
Cool.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to say about exams, like, you can always say no or stop or pause. And we don't do a good job telling people, you can say no, right? Like, I'm going to check, like, when I say, like, all right, I'm going to look at you. That means like a thyroid, a breast or chest, belly, and pelvic exam. You can say, actually, I have a question about why you want to do X exam. And after they explain it to you, you can just say, I'd actually like to decline that today. For whatever reason.
Yeah.
It's your body.
I think also that power dynamics between someone in the medical, like a doctor or a nurse, and the patient. I think a lot of people, I learned to do it, but I think a lot of people for a long time, like, I just kind of did what I was told. And then I started thinking, what do I actually want? And like being like, I'm going to do this. And it worked out great, but I just didn't know that I could.
You can do that because,
Yeah.
again, nobody talks about these
No one
things.
talks about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So really
I wish it was like in health class in high schools. But
Yeah.
they just, like, that they went through, like, here's a doctor's visit. Here's how to advocate for yourself. You can say no, but also, like, here is what the provider is expecting, right? They're expecting you will come with a problem and sort of succinctly give them what the problem is and your questions, and then they will prescribe you a treatment. And if it doesn't work, then they want you to call them or come back.
Amazing. I think that's a great idea. I'm envisioning a new home ec experience where like class 1 is like the importance of medical exams and how to talk to your doctor and where to
Yes.
go if you have an issue. The next one is like how to make a budget. The next one is like how to go into the grocery store and not just buy junk food.
Yeah.
Let's make this practical.
Right. That's a great idea. I would so get behind that.
I know.
And also, like, the chair for the exam is like fuzzy and warm and like,
Oh,
doesn't it have paper that you stick to?
Yeah, no
yeah,
paper.
I know.
Like,
I've only gotten vinyl and cling paper, so that a fuzzy chair sounds amazing.
I know, just there's so many things they could do.
I don't know if we could clean. I think the issue with the fuzzy chair is we wouldn't be able to clean it.
Right, he's right.
But we
'cause
do
you have to
clean-
have like a pull off thing, and everyone would have to have that. What if we brought our own blanket? Could that?
Yeah, you can totally bring your own blanket and put it on the bed.
I'm doing that now.
Mind blown.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna care, especially if you take it with you and you're gonna wash it at home.
And a heating pad. That would help me so much.
We could do that ourselves.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Why is this so mind-blowing? I'm so weirded out that it's so hard. Why are we like this? Why are humans like this? Do you know the answer? I don't know the answer. Like, why are we like getting our own way?
We're wired for a certain level of compliance and efficiency. Like, that is kind of like what our training has been pushing us towards. So you think about going to a doctor's office and you're like, these are the rules. I know the rules.
Yeah.
And like you're on auto.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're on auto also because we have a long list of patients to see in a finite amount of time. And we want to take care of everybody.
Yeah.
We just need you to tell us when to slow it down a smidge. Like, if that is
I feel your pain. Yeah. I cannot imagine.
I'm a little like inspired and blown away by how this conversation, like the things we talked about, they're so simple. It's communication, it's asking questions, it's advocating for yourself, and kind of trusting that your doctor or your physician wants to hear it.
Yeah.
I think that's really all it is.
Like, people who go into medicine, especially like general medicine, like family practice, pediatrics, gynecology, we are there because we want to take care of you. We are not making a ton of money.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We are, you tend to get more of the idealists in those sort of, in more kind of primary care fields.
That's why I always have liked nurse practitioners. I've connected more with nurse practitioners usually.
They also give us 20-minute visits instead of 15-minute visits.
Ah, okay.
Nice.
That's also something to think about. But, I am limited in my knowledge, right? I can kind of do about 80% of what a physician can do.
Yeah.
And when I run out of, I know where my knowledge ends and when you need to see a physician, and I will tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rita, what were you going to say?
I was going to pivot and ask if you had any foundational or moving stories or tales when you were growing up that kind of are connected to either the act of caring for others or medicine, or even like women aging. Like I wonder if there was any kind of personal mythology for you.
Yeah. I really thought about this question, and I can't remember when I first learned about it, but I think it just was always something that was there because I grew up in a family of medical professionals. And so it was just sort of talked about like periods were. And then I got to college and I was like, oh, boys think periods are gross. This is odd. But sort of before that, like I remember when my mom's mom went through menopause, when I had my first period, my parents were out of town. She was staying with us because they're on vacation and they leave you with your grandparents when they go on vacation. And I was like, I think I got my period. And she was like, great, here's a pad. I'll show you how to use the pad. You're going to sleep on a towel. Tell me whatever you need. And I was like, oh my God, she just did that. Like that was the most normal thing. And then, I remember like talking to her later being like, do you have a period? And she was like, no. And I was like, okay. But I don't think I really questioned why that was. And then sort of the next memory I can kind of conjure up about menopause is when my mom and her sister went through menopause. There is a very kind of dark sense of humor that runs in my family, and I think in many families who have people in the medical field.
Mm-hmm.
And they just would laugh so much about their hot flashes. Like they'd start fanning themselves and like, whoop, 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 I'm having a hot flash, and just like giggle like teenagers.
Yeah.
And they just weren't secretive about it at all. We all knew that they're very close in age, but we all knew that when they were going through menopause and when they were having hot flashes, and it wasn't something that was hidden, which now I look back and I'm like, oh, that was kind of nice.
Yeah.
And it's why you're doing what you're doing now, I think. I mean, those are like stories you heard from your family, and that's the way you kind of grew up in it. So you brought that to other people, which is really cool that you were able to like bring that to your patients.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll, shout out to my mom here.
Yeah.
Did a good job.
Totally. Pixie, do you have any other questions that you'd like to ask? I'm satiated.
I think I am too. I really appreciate you sharing all this information. Is there anything else you feel is really important that you want to say before we close that you feel like we missed?
I do.
Okay, do.
I want to quick talk about some things that are not normal in menopause.
Okay.
Ooh, mystery. So, and I bring this up because of the podcast where Ruta, you interviewed your mom, and she was having some things that are not normal. And as I was listening, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I wish she had just gone to her doctor and like said having all this bleeding. So one thing that is very abnormal in menopause is irregular. Not like you usually have a period every month, sometimes you skip it, but you're having weird bleeding in between your periods. Your periods are fluctuating by like kind of more than 7 to 9 days, right?
Right. That's an important distinction.
Yeah.
Yes, right? Missing a period versus having what we call intermenstrual bleeding, where you're having bleeding in between periods.
Okay.
Periods that are extremely heavy, or bleeding that is extremely heavy, like where you are soaking a pad in an hour, every hour for more than 2 hours. That is way too much bleeding. That's a good time for an ER. Bleeding, sort of going on beyond 10 days. So those are things that are good to look out for. And if anybody who is having that, I would encourage you to. This is not medical advice. I'm just sharing my experience and expertise. I would encourage you to follow up with your healthcare provider.
Right.
Yeah.
Fair.
Um,
Anything else that's kind of unusual that actually is a common unusual?
Yeah. So I would say sometimes people have a little bit of like mood swing, mild, but if people are having a lot of depression, that is also not normal. What else did I want to say about this?
I love that you take notes.
Yeah, me too.
Leading by example.
Moods are important. Yeah. A little bit of weight gain is also pretty normal, but if you're gaining like 20 to 50 pounds, right? It's not like, oh, you gained like 5 pounds. I would also go and see your doctor because it can be from something else that is not menopause.
Good
So
calls.
just pay attention to how it's going and what's going on and check in if it's weird.
And also like ask your provider, right? If it's normal, they'll tell you it's normal. If it's not normal, like from my experience, I would rather people send me a message on the portal or come in for a visit and say like, I'm having all these things. Right. And I can say these are normal or these are not normal.
Right.
Like I'd rather you ask if you're curious than not ask because you think I don't want to hear from you.
Right. Oh, it's so beautiful because everyone that we've talked to that in some way deals directly with people in a, counselor or, service profession, that's like the absolute most common thing that people at the heart of it want to know if what they're experiencing is normal or am I normal? Is this body part normal?
Oh, all the time. I get that question so much where people are like, I've never asked anyone this, but is this normal? Oh, yeah, it's totally normal. Or like, actually, thank you for bringing it to my attention. It's really not normal and we should look into it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of like all the new artwork, like all the vulva artwork where we're now starting to like realize that actually vulvas look so different depending. And like there's just like this array of like almost like a thumbprint of how different everything looks.
Yeah, there is this book I love. I think it's probably, it's from the 80s. It's very like kind of 80s feminism. It's called Sex for One.
Sex for One. Awesome.
Yes. It's about masturbation. But my favorite part of this book, and I recommend it to people who come in and ask me if their vulva looks normal, is it is just filled with pencil drawings of vulvas.
I'm checking that out.
In all shapes and sizes. It's a great book. It really normalizes the, sort of span of what healthy bodies look like.
I love it. Almost no one knows about this 90s kind of after school special movie that I saw. My parents showed me. It's called Questions About Sex with LeVar Burton.
Oh my God.
I'm going to look this up.
If you can find it, I feel like it probably still has legs. It is so beautiful.
It's amazing.
And I swear, I feel like that's why I came out like not shamey about myself. And like, I just was curious and I just let that curiosity continue to roam because LeVar Burton said it was totally fine.
Of course.
That's wonderful. He was like, I think like the voice of authority in our childhood. Absolutely. Like reading Rainbow and
yep. He's my childhood 100%.
Spock, LeVar Burton. Bette Midler, I think, was also a strong authority. I was obsessed with her as
Patrick Stewart for me because I watched Next Generation constantly. But yeah. And was the Menopause guidebook the other thing that you shared?
Yeah, that's another one that I like. I haven't read it cover to cover, but I've read parts of it, and people tend to find it helpful who I've recommended it to. It's a lot of good evidence-based advice and information, right? It is coming from a place that of scientific research, and that is the information that they are sharing.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll share that.
Sorry?
I'm just saying we'll share that in our show notes so people can
And then
get it.
if your provider has access to UpToDate has some really nice patient guides. One that I print out not infrequently is called Patient Education Menopause. And it's a long talk about menopause in really easy to read terms for people who aren't medically trained. It substitutes the jargon with real people language.
That's really helpful. So it's a lot of amazing information.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for having me on today. It's been a pleasure. You have wonderful questions. Thank you for listening.
Would you consider coming back when we start interviewing more women?
Oh yeah, you let me know.
Oh, amazing. You're the best.
Yay. Yeah, I feel like this has been a great kind of like foundation as we begin this, because I think you're our third chat on this so far, and it's just kind of this nice, solid, like, I don't know, it's good energy. I like it, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing the good vibes, Claire.
Yeah, a lot of good vibes. So we'll close out. Thank you so much to everyone listening. Please check out our show notes. We're going to link all of those amazing resources there.
Stay tuned for more episodes on this topic and others, as always, woven with magic, myth, fairy tales, creativity, and our friendship.
The music we use for our podcast, entitled Whimsical Aliens, was written and performed by Alejandro Bernard from Ithaca, New York. Please subscribe and like his music tutorials on YouTube, and you can become a Patreon to his work as well. This project is edited and produced by Yearn. Thank you so much for your support, and we will see you next time.
Thank you all for listening, and thank you, Claire, for being with us.
Yeah. My pleasure.
Bye.